Today, going on to the political part of the podcast, you have General Motors to lay off an additional 164 employees due to the UAW strike. Now we'll review the total layoff and the strike numbers, as this is one of the biggest political issues because the UAW contributes a very large amount of money to political campaigns. Hilariously and ironically enough, they gave to campaign politicians who want to ban ICE engines and push EV vehicles through their mandates, which hilariously and ironically enough will mean less profit for the UAW and less jobs for the UAW. Also, those politicians help contribute to inflation. So, I know many people say it's not prudent to victim blame, but in this case, they're a contributing factor and a pretty good example or use case of you get what you vote for. But nevertheless, now we have this issue where the UAW wanted $80 to $100 billion for their next contract, which would have bankrupted the big three. The big three being General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. Though Chrysler went bankrupt so bad in 2009, they were bought out by a European company. They're now called Stellantis, or Stellantis, if you're more Italian inclined, perhaps. So they wanted $80 to $100 billion, literally more profit than the companies generate for the most part. I believe GM did surpass that amount a little bit recently. But nevertheless, they wanted to bankrupt the companies through a myriad of initiatives, from getting paid 40 hours a week, but only working 32. They also want to have a 40% increase of their wages. They want their pensions back. They want retiree, medical, a bunch of things that helped contribute to the bankruptcies in 2009, specifically of General Motors as well as Chrysler. Ford barely squeaked by. They were very conveniently, they took out a loan right before the economy went to hell in 2008. And they scraped out by the skin of their teeth. They did not go bankrupt. So we have this strike going on where the UAW has been very strategic. Instead of paying everyone $500 a week not to work, which is the current stipend or the current amount that they pay each strikee, they have a huge fund. It's estimated to be about $825 million. So this is not going to end anytime soon. But if you're on strike and you're holding a sign, you get paid $500 per week, which is an unconceivable large amount of money considering the effort you put in. Good for them. But because they're very, very strategic, instead of paying everyone in the UAW to go on strike, which would cost them more money because, again, it's $500 per member, well, they just have to remove a couple from a factory and the whole factory can't operate because apparently the big three they don't have the prudent business decision to cross-train employees. As simple as that sounds, like that seems to be, with all the data we have now, the issue is that when they remove these employees from the factories, well, I remember for the Ford Blanco plant, when that strike started a couple weeks ago, they believe that specifically the departments in the factory that they took employees out for the UAW strike were finishing, final assembly, and I believe paint. And without those, for now, until we have the robots, it won't function. Now, that being said, Tesla is actually creating a humanoid robot. Perhaps the writing is on the wall more than we know. But nevertheless, that means that the factories are basically not doing anything. So the big three want to cut their costs and mitigate some of that. They actually have to lay off some of the folks. So it looks like these 164 employees that General Motors is laying off are going to come from two of GM's metal centers. And it looks like since the UAW has gone on strike, about 3,000 employees have been laid off by the big three. And in terms of the percentage of breakdown, the UAW is currently on strike. You have a 17% breakdown that correlates to about 25,000 workers who have been on strike at 43 facilities in 21 states. And it looks like, if you want to break that down to how much that's costing the union per week, you got $25,000 or 25,000 workers. Remember, it's $500 per week. So that means the union is paying them about $12.5 million to stand there with a sign. Well, perhaps the upside is that those members are finally getting something for their dues that they are paid or coerced to pay all the time to the UAW. Granted, they'll never get the money back that they give all the politicians that created these problems to begin with, but nevertheless, they're getting some of that money back. So, I don't know, if I was a union member, I don't know what they get paid per week before the strike, but given the effort input for this, not a bad deal for the current situation. Now, again, the strike started earlier in September, specifically on September 15th, and again, it's only cost them $12.5 million per week. They have $830 million in their bank. So this strike could last quite a while. And in terms of the big three, why they might not acquiesce to wanting to bankrupt themselves with a new contract with the UAW, well, there's a lot of people saying, oh yeah, what about supply chain? People need new cars. Do they? Like right now, do you need to go buy a new car? The folks that I know, again, anecdotal experience from my friends, my family, myself, but we're all trying to make our dollars stretch further. Because again, we have very high economic uncertainty. I partially blame this for politics because it's grown so much that politics affects every business, even small mom and pop shops, where a lot of those business owners, those businesses, they're all concerned, depending on who gets elected, they very well may be regulated out of existence. Because remember, every time there's a new regulation, it's going to hurt a small business. Either they have to take on that burden themselves, they need to hire an extra consultant to figure that crap out. It's never good, is what I'm trying to say. So with all that uncertainty, a lot of things that businesses would normally do, like reinvest in hiring new employees or new material, new machinery, new software, a lot of that is just kind of on hold because of the uncertainty. So it's pretty strategic. You really don't need to buy a car right now, in my opinion, unless, heaven forbid, you get in an accident. And even then, you could buy something that would last you a quarter of a century, such as a Toyota or a Honda or a Tesla, which are all not currently kneecapped by the UAW. And the UAW cost is so high. Even before the strike, they were paid the most in the industry. This isn't going to help the big three adapt to the EV culture, the EV phenomenon that the government is partially forcing upon them. So it'll be interesting to see, but with all the data we have right now, there's not really much of an incentive for either side to really concede a lot. Because again, depending on how much the big three give the UAW, they'll be bankrupt. They won't have the resources to actually compete with Tesla. I don't think that's a prudent business decision. That's what GM wants. Specifically, you talk to Mary Barra, the CEO, she's very adamant, directly calling out Tesla for the reasons they made cuts, they laid off, they actually bought out thousands of corporate employees from their salary and their contracts so that they could eliminate the positions altogether to try to be more competitive price-wise. So it'll be interesting to see. Let me know in the comments, do you think this strike will end anytime soon? I can't but think, no, I would say probably not. Thank you everyone for taking the time to do it in today. I really appreciate your support. Also, take the time to click that subscribe button. I know it's ambitious, but we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of October. So every one of those clicks especially helps. Also, the critical feedback is also appreciated if you take the time to comment. I always try to take the time, even if it's a day or two late, to read and respond to your comments because I do appreciate the feedback as we try to make the show better and better. Also, lastly, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.